Maya Rodriguez had never felt smaller than she did sitting in the gleaming chrome chair designed for beings 3 times her size. The Galactic Council Chamber aboard New Harmony Station was impressive in that particular way that screamed we spent way too much money on interior decorating. Crystal formations jutted from the walls like expensive art installations, while holographic displays flickered with data streams and languages that looked like someone had sneezed on a keyboard. She clutched her tablet like a security blanket, trying to look professional while fighting the overwhelming urge to take a selfie. After all, how many humans could say they'd attended their first Galactic Council meeting? About 12, actually, but who was counting? Earth's cultural observer. They'd called her appointment, which was diplomatic speak for we need a human here, but we don't want to give them any real power. Maya was fine with that. Observing was what she did best anyway. Chancellor Vex strutted to the central podium, his iridescent feathers catching the artificial sunlight. The avian leader carried himself with the pompous dignity of someone who'd never been told his species evolved from dinosaurs that forgot how to be scary. His voice carried across the chamber with practiced authority. Esteemed colleagues, we gather today to address matters of galactic importance, Vex announced, spreading his wings in what Maya assumed was their version of jazz hands. The expansion protocols, trade regulations, and of course, our newest members. That last bit was delivered with the tone parents use when discussing their toddler's latest adventure in creative destruction. Admiral Krog's massive form shifted in his reinforced seat, scales scraping against metal. The Saurian military commander looked like evolution had specifically designed him to win arm wrestling contests and intimidate parking violators. His amber eyes fixed on Maya with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly annoying math problem. The human question grows more pressing daily, Krog rumbled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. Their expansion rate exceeds all projections. Ambassador Zilch didn't look up from her data streams, because the hive mind representative was apparently capable of holding 17 different conversations simultaneously while computing pi to 1,000 decimal places. Her insectoid features remained expressionless as she multitasked her way through galactic diplomacy. Statistical analysis confirms irregular behavioral patterns, Zilch stated in her characteristically monotone delivery. Probability matrices suggest continued unpredictability. Maya made a note on her tablet. They think we're weird. Not exactly groundbreaking intelligence, but she was thorough. The chamber filled with representatives from dozens of species. The Cetacean Federation's ambassador floated in his mobility tank, looking perpetually wise and slightly judgmental. The crystalline collective's delegate refracted light in patterns that probably meant something profound. And somewhere in the back, the gaseous entities were doing whatever it was that sentient clouds did during important meetings. Maya felt like the kid who'd accidentally wandered into the adults' table at Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone else seemed to know the rules, the protocols, the proper way to sit without falling out of furniture designed for beings with entirely different anatomy. Before we proceed, Chancellor Vex continued, preening slightly, let us acknowledge our human observer. Maya Rodriguez represents Earth's commitment to understanding galactic civilization. A polite smattering of sounds that might have been applause filled the chamber. Maya raised her hand in a small wave, immediately regretting it when several species flinched. Apparently, rapid hand movements were either threatening or obscene in some cultures. Possibly both. Thank you for having me, Maya said, her voice barely carrying in the vast space. I'm here to learn. Which was true, technically, though what she was learning might surprise a few people. The human problem, as Chancellor Vex so diplomatically put it, was apparently quite the hot topic in galactic circles. Maya listened with growing amusement as species after species shared their concerns about humanity's rapid expansion across the cosmos. They've colonized 4 systems in the past decade, Admiral Krog growled, pulling up holographic displays of human settlements. Their growth rate is unprecedented, dangerously so. Maya scribbled another note, we're apparently breeding like rabbits. Dad would be proud. Ambassador Zilch's compound eyes flickered as she processed data streams. Human unpredictability factors exceed acceptable parameters. They form emotional attachments to predatory species previously classified as threats. You mean pets? Maya asked quietly. Pets, yes, Zilch confirmed with the tone of someone discussing a particularly disturbing mental illness. Humans domesticate apex predators for companionship purposes. This behavior lacks logical foundation. The cetacean representative's translation device crackled to life. We've observed humans creating entertainment media about their own extinction scenarios. They appear to find potential species termination amusing. Maya almost laughed. You mean zombie movies? Zombie movies, horror films, apocalypse scenarios, the whale-like being continued. Humans consume fictional depictions of their own demise as recreational activity. She could practically hear the unspoken question hanging in the air. What kind of species does that? Chancellor Vex ruffled his feathers importantly. These behavioral anomalies suggest humans may pose a risk to galactic stability. Their expansion must be carefully managed. Managed how? Exactly? Maya asked, pen poised over her tablet. The question seemed innocent enough, but something in the chamber's atmosphere shifted. Several delegates exchanged glances that were probably meaningful if you understood the subtleties of interspecies politics. Through appropriate oversight, Vex replied carefully, guidance from more experienced civilizations. Maya nodded thoughtfully. So like parental supervision but for entire planets? Admiral Krog's tail twitched. The comparison is not entirely inaccurate. Interesting, Maya murmured, making more notes. And who decides what constitutes appropriate guidance? The Council, naturally, Vex said, though his tone suggested the question itself was slightly improper. We've maintained galactic peace for over 3 centuries. Through consensus? Maya asked. Through proper authority, Krog interjected, his voice carrying a warning edge. Maya glanced around the chamber, noting the subtle hierarchies and seating arrangements, the deference patterns in body language, but the way certain species seemed to defer to others without question. It was fascinating, really. Like watching a nature documentary about dominance displays, except with more advanced technology and fewer obvious teeth. I see, she said softly. So the Council makes decisions about species like humanity based on the wisdom of more established civilizations. Precisely, Chancellor Vex preened. And these established civilizations have never made mistakes in their assessments? The chamber fell quiet. Ambassador Zilch's mandibles clicked in what might have been discomfort. The crystalline delegate's light patterns shifted to what Maya was beginning to recognize as the galactic equivalent of awkward silence. We learn from experience, Vex said finally. Of course, Maya agreed. Experience is valuable. Though I suppose even experienced civilizations might have blind spots about species that think differently than they do. She kept her tone perfectly innocent, but several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Maya continued taking notes, apparently oblivious to the tension building around her simple observations. After all, she was just there to learn. The powder keg that was galactic politics finally found its spark during what should have been a routine discussion about military jurisdiction protocols. Admiral Krog had been explaining the Saurian Empire's patrol routes around human space when Chancellor Vex made the mistake of correcting him. Actually, Admiral, our latest intelligence suggests your patrol frequency in Sector 7 is insufficient, Vex announced, his feathers practically glowing with superiority. Krog's massive head swiveled toward the avian leader with predatory focus. Our intelligence indicates otherwise, Chancellor. Perhaps your sources are outdated. The Avian Intelligence Network maintains the most current data in the galaxy, Vex replied stiffly. Your data contradicts our field reports, Krog's voice dropped to a dangerous rumble. Unless you're suggesting our military commanders are incompetent. Maya watched the exchange with the fascination of someone witnessing a car accident in slow motion. She'd seen this exact dynamic play out countless times at family gatherings, corporate meetings, and PTA fundraisers. Two authority figures, both convinced they were right, both too proud to back down. I'm merely suggesting that aerial reconnaissance provides a broader perspective than ground-based observations, Vex said. Which was diplomat speak for you're wrong and I'm being polite about it. Krog's claws scraped against his chair's armrests. Are you questioning Saurian military competence, Bird? And there it was. Maya almost winced. Once someone dropped the species-specific insults, things usually went downhill fast. I'm questioning your data accuracy, reptile, Vex shot back, abandoning all pretense of diplomatic courtesy. Maya cleared her throat softly. Excuse me, but this reminds me of my family's dinner arguments. Both leaders turned to look at her with expressions that suggested they'd forgotten humans could speak. Family arguments? Ambassador Zilch inquired with mechanical curiosity. Oh, you know how it is, Maya said with a gentle smile. Uncle Bob insists he knows the best route to Grandma's house because he's been driving longer, but Aunt Susan has GPS data that says otherwise. They both have valid information, but they're arguing about who has the right to be correct, rather than comparing their actual data. The chamber fell silent. Maya continued innocently. Usually it turns out Uncle Bob knows about construction delays that don't show up on GPS, while Aunt Susan has real-time traffic updates that Uncle Bob missed. They're both right about different pieces of the puzzle. Chancellor Vex's feathers had gone perfectly still. An interesting analogy. Meng. The thing is, Maya added helpfully, the real problem starts when someone's been listening to both conversations the whole time without telling anyone. Admiral Krog's eyes narrowed to slits. Elaborate. Maya gestured vaguely. Well, if Aunt Susan somehow knew about Uncle Bob's construction delay information without him telling her, that would suggest she'd been eavesdropping on his phone calls with his contractor buddy, which would be really awkward at family dinner. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Chancellor Vex's beak opened and closed soundlessly. You're suggesting, Admiral Krog said very slowly, that someone has been monitoring private communications? Oh, I'm not suggesting anything, Maya replied quickly. I was just explaining why family dinners get weird when people have information they shouldn't have. Like if Chancellor Vex somehow knew details about Saurian patrol reports that weren't included in official council briefings. Ambassador Zilch's compound eyes focused on Maya with sudden intensity. Clarification requested. Are you implying surveillance activities? Maya blinked innocently. I'm just wondering how aerial reconnaissance could provide data about ground-based field reports unless someone was intercepting the field reports themselves. But I'm probably misunderstanding something. I'm new to galactic politics. Chancellor Vex's magnificent plumage had lost most of its luster. Admiral Krog rose slowly from his chair, all 7 feet of reptilian fury focused on the bird-like diplomat. Is there something you'd like to share with the Council, Chancellor? Krog's voice was deadly quiet. Maya made a note on her tablet. Oops. What happened next could only be described as a masterclass in how quickly diplomatic relations could deteriorate when someone accidentally kicked over the wrong rock. Maya had somehow managed to expose what was apparently the galaxy's worst-kept secret. Everyone was spying on everyone else. Chancellor Vex tried damage control first. The Avian Intelligence Network operates within all legal parameters established by the Council Charter. Legal parameters that don't include intercepting military communications, Admiral Krog snarled, his scales shifting to a distinctly threatening shade of red. Ambassador Zilch's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed this new information. Query: if surveillance protocols exist, why were hive mind operations not informed? Maya tilted her head curiously. What kind of operations would need to know about surveillance protocols? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Zilch's multifaceted eyes went very still. Standard diplomatic operations, she said carefully. Oh, like the genetic compatibility studies? Maya asked with apparent innocence. Those must require a lot of coordination between species. The crystalline collective's delegates suddenly blazed with sharp, angry light patterns. Their translator crackled. Genetic studies were discontinued after the Proxima incident. Were they? Maya made another note. I read something in the archives about ongoing biocompatibility research. But maybe I misunderstood the classification codes. Ambassador Zilch's compound eyes were now focused entirely on Maya with an intensity that should have been unsettling. Instead, Maya just looked politely interested, like a student asking for clarification during a particularly boring lecture. Archive access is restricted, Zilch stated. For current projects, sure, Maya agreed. But historical research is usually public record. Unless the projects aren't actually historical yet. The chamber erupted into chaos. Admiral Krog was demanding answers about surveillance protocols. Chancellor Vex was deflecting questions about intelligence operations. The crystalline delegate was pulsing with what were probably very rude light patterns. And Ambassador Zilch was making clicking sounds that her translator couldn't seem to process. Maya raised her hand tentatively. I'm sorry, but could someone explain why genetic research would be classified if it's just theoretical? Because it's not theoretical, the cetacean representative's translator boomed across the chamber. The hive mind has been conducting illegal enhancement experiments for decades. That's unsubstantiated, Zilch protested, but her mechanical tone carried a defensive edge. Unlike the unsubstantiated claims about our black market operations? The whale like being shot back. Maya blinked. Black market operations? The Cetacean Federation has been selling restricted technology to non-council species, Admiral Krog accused, apparently deciding that if they were airing dirty laundry, everyone's clothes were going in the wash. Only to maintain peace in contested sectors, the Cetacean delegate replied stiffly. Peace through illegal arms deals? Chancellor Vex squawked. This from the species that lectures us about moral authority? Maya looked around the chamber with growing fascination. So everyone's been doing things they probably shouldn't be doing? But everyone knows about it, but nobody talks about it officially? It's called diplomacy? Ambassador Zilch snapped, her usual monotone replaced by something approaching actual emotion. It's called hypocrisy, Admiral Krog rumbled. It's called necessary pragmatism, Chancellor Vex protested. Maya tapped her stylus against her tablet thoughtfully. It sounds like everyone's been playing by different rules while pretending to follow the same ones. That must make alliance negotiations really complicated. The word alliance hit the chamber like a photon torpedo. Suddenly everyone was looking at everyone else with the kind of suspicion usually reserved for relatives at will readings. Speaking of alliances, Maya continued helpfully. How do secret defense pacts work with all this surveillance going on? I mean, if everyone knows about everyone else's operations, then secret alliances aren't really secret, are they? The silence that followed was so complete that Maya could hear the station's life support systems humming in the background. There are no secret alliances, Chancellor Vex said carefully. Oh, Maya said, looking genuinely confused. Then I definitely misunderstood those encrypted communications logs. Sorry, I thought the timestamp matches with the Avian-Saurian Defense Coordination meetings meant something important. Admiral Krog's roar shook the chamber. What coordination meetings? Maya had definitely kicked over the wrong rock. She was starting to think it might have been the entire Foundation. Maya watched in growing amazement as 3 centuries of carefully maintained galactic civilization crumbled around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. What had started as a simple diplomatic discussion had turned into the political equivalent of a nuclear meltdown, and she was apparently ground zero. Admiral Krog was now standing at his full, intimidating height, his scales having shifted to what Maya was beginning to recognize as prepare for war coloration. You want to explain these coordination meetings, Bird? Chancellor Vex had gone from pompous to panicked in record time. His feathers were ruffled in every direction, making him look like he'd been electrocuted. Those meetings were purely precautionary discussions about mutual defense scenarios. Mutual defense against whom? The cetacean representative demanded, his translation device crackling with indignation. Against potential threats to galactic stability, Vex replied weakly. Maya raised her hand like a student with a question. I'm sorry, but doesn't galactic stability include all council species? So mutual defense would be a council-wide decision, not a bilateral agreement between 2 species? The logic was so simple, so devastatingly obvious, that the silence stretched for several long seconds before Ambassador Zilch spoke up. Bilateral defense agreements violate Council Charter Section 12, she stated with mechanical precision. All defense protocols must be submitted to Council review. Unless, Maya added thoughtfully, the defense agreement is against other Council species. Then I guess you wouldn't want to submit it for review. That did it. The dam burst completely. Defense against Council species? The crystalline delegate's translator practically screamed. You've been planning military action against us? Not planning, Admiral Krog growled, preparing for contingencies. What contingencies? Maya asked innocently. Species that pose risks to galactic order, Chancellor Vex said, his voice getting smaller by the minute. Maya glanced around the chamber, noting which species were clustered together, which ones were backing away from others, and which ones were looking increasingly homicidal. And who determines which species pose risks? The senior members of the council, Vex replied automatically, then immediately looked like he wanted to swallow his own tongue. Senior members, Maya repeated, so not all council members are equal? The question landed like an antimatter bomb. Species that had been allied for centuries were suddenly glaring at each other across ancient hierarchies that had apparently never been as buried as everyone pretended. Council membership operates on experience-based seniority, Ambassador Zilch explained, though her tone suggested she was reciting official doctrine rather than expressing personal belief. Experience-based seniority, Maya nodded. So newer species don't get equal votes on decisions that affect them? They get proportional representation based on galactic contribution metrics, Chancellor Vex said weakly. Maya made a note. And who calculates the contribution metrics? The senior members, several voices answered simultaneously, and then stopped speaking as they realized what they'd just admitted. The chamber erupted again. But this time it wasn't just angry voices. Species were actually leaving their seats, abandoning diplomatic protocol entirely. The gaseous entities were swirling in agitated patterns. The crystalline collective was pulsing with light that definitely meant something rude. And the cetacean representative was making whale sounds that probably couldn't be translated in polite company. Maya watched delegations storm toward the exits, declaring the dissolution of trade agreements, defense pacts, and in one memorable case, a centuries-old peace treaty over fishing rights in the Andromeda Neutral Zone. I think I might have asked the wrong questions, Maya said quietly to no one in particular. Ambassador Zilch paused in her data processing to look at Maya with something that might have been respect. Query, were they the wrong questions, or were they simply questions that revealed correct answers? Maya considered this. Around them, galactic civilization was basically having a complete nervous breakdown. Species were choosing sides, declaring independence from council authority, and generally behaving like teenagers whose parents had just announced a very messy divorce. I guess that depends on whether the answers were supposed to stay hidden, Maya replied. Admiral Krog's booming laughter cut through the chaos. Hidden? Child, we've been lying to ourselves for 300 years. You just made it impossible to keep pretending. Chancellor Vex was gathering his remaining dignity around him like a cloak. The council will reconvene when cooler heads prevail. What council? The cetacean representative called out as his mobility tank moved toward the exit. I see a bunch of species who just discovered they've been played for fools by a rigged system. Maya made one final note on her tablet, mission accomplished. 24 hours later, New Harmony Station was basically a ghost town. What had once been the shining symbol of galactic unity now looked like the aftermath of the universe's most expensive divorce party. Broken alliances littered the corridors like confetti, and the few remaining diplomatic staff moved around with the shell-shocked expressions of people trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Maya Rodriguez sat in her quarters, calmly packing her few belongings while the galaxy burned outside her window. Well, not literally burned. That would come later, probably sometime next week when the Saurian Empire decided to test their new independence by claiming a few contested systems. Her personal communicator chimed with an encrypted signal from Earth. Maya smiled and activated the privacy shield before answering. Maya Rodriguez reporting. Dr. Rodriguez, the familiar voice of Director Harrison crackled through the quantum encryption. I trust your cultural observation mission was productive? Maya glanced out her viewport at the emergency evacuation shuttles fleeing the station. You could say that, sir. The Galactic Council has decided to take an indefinite recess. Indefinite? Well, permanent, actually. Apparently they had some philosophical differences about the nature of democratic representation. Pause. And how exactly did these philosophical differences come to light? Maya grinned. I asked some questions. The right questions, I assume? The most innocent questions imaginable, Maya replied. Amazing how much truth comes out when someone actually asks why things work the way they do. Director Harrison's chuckle was barely audible through the encryption. And the target species? Oh. Mess. They're doing fine. The avians are busy explaining to their own people why they've been running a surveillance state for 3 centuries. The Saurians are dealing with a military coup after their admiralty discovered the government's been making secret deals without consulting them. The hive mind is fragmenting into about 47 different sub-collectives, each convinced the others have been compromised by illegal genetic modification. And the cetaceans? Civil war, mostly. Turns out half their federation didn't know about the arms dealing, and they're not taking it well. Maya sealed her travel case and looked around her quarters one last time. She'd actually grown fond of the place. It had excellent acoustics for psychological warfare. Dr. Rodriguez, I have to ask, did you plan for it to cascade this extensively? Maya considered the question. Sir, when you ask people to examine a house of cards, you have to expect some structural instability. I just asked them to look at their foundation, and found it was made of lies, corruption, and secret power structures. Pretty much, yes, sir. Another pause. Outstanding work, Doctor. Earth's expansion programs should proceed much more smoothly, now that the Council's oversight protocols have been discontinued. Thank you, sir. Though I should mention, several species are asking about joining Earth's colonial protection program now that their old alliances have collapsed. Even better. How soon can you be ready for your next assignment? Maya checked her chronometer. I have a transport to the Andromedan Empire leaving in 6 hours. The Andromedans? They're supposed to be impossible to manipulate. Their culture is built on absolute logical transparency. Maya's smile turned predatory. That's what makes them so interesting, sir. I've been reading their philosophical texts, and I have some questions about their definition of logical consistency. God help them, Director Harrison muttered. I prefer to think of it as helping them discover their own truth, Maya replied innocently. As she walked through the abandoned corridors of New Harmony Station, Maya reflected on the effectiveness of her chosen profession. Psychological warfare specialists used to need weapons, armies, complicated battle plans. These days, all you really needed was curiosity, careful observation, and the willingness to ask uncomfortable questions. The galaxy was a big place, full of ancient civilizations that had gotten comfortable with their own contradictions. Maya's job was to make them uncomfortable again. It was remarkably fulfilling work. Her transport was waiting at Docking Bay 7, along with her next assignment briefing. The Andromedan Empire had invited Earth to participate in a philosophical exchange program designed to explore the nature of logical civilization. Maya boarded her ship, already composing her first innocent question about the logical consistency of absolute transparency in a society that maintained privacy rights. Some people collected stamps. Maya Rodriguez collected collapsed civilizations. It was a living,